Hi, everybody. We are here with Susan and Scott Westwater. We are going to get started in just a few minutes. I know it's not quite 1 o'clock. If you're here, if you want to just say hi in the chat and let us know you're here, and you can let us know where you're from. So Scott and Susan, when anything hot in AI any hot AI news that we can talk about as people are joining us?
Oh gosh, I feel like every day there is, and it's drinking from a fire hose.
Yep.
I think some of the more exciting things that are coming out right now is all of the excitement around some of the models that are being looked at, but are honestly the whole idea of wrappers and the reasoning models and those things. I think the other big hot news last week that was being highlighted was the government knows about AGI now. And they know it's coming, but what does that mean for us today? And I think that's the big thing of, can I afford that today? Probably not.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I saw that. Wait, so ChatGPT has the corporate version. Is that what you're talking about?
So it's part of it, but there's also, so AGI is kind of the next step in the evolution of artificial intelligence. So it's general intelligence, artificial general intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So the claim would be that it's capable of producing outputs at the level of a PhD researcher.
Crazy.
And then super intelligence is kind of the next horizon after that, where it's basically capable of outputs that humans can't do. Like it exceeds our capabilities. So these are still sci-fi type terms, but these are kind of on the horizon. And so it's just as much now to start getting ready for that world, and the tools, especially in a marketing context, the tools that exist, the processes and frameworks that we use, all are things that you can use to either automate parts of your workflow, make things more efficient, and generally get some more time back in your day so you can focus on more strategic things. That's really our position with AI. It should be an enabler of, not a replacement for.
Well, looking at some of the pricing that we're seeing floated, right? $20,000 a month. Oh my gosh. That's not going to be viable for quite a few. I mean, enterprises, sure, they've got it sorted. They've got the budgets.
Right.
It's more of the smaller companies and that mid-tier that, hey, when's that going to make sense? Or how do we make that work? Now, in some cases, sure, there might be a position of, hey, I've always wanted to hire this role. I could never afford it. And by the way, in that scenario, there wasn't a job that was going to be open because they couldn't afford to sustain it. So it's kind of going this idea of what's a role I wanted to tap into before. That might be where that makes sense. And how you justify it. But I think we're still looking at, I think the big news is still, what is the value of AI and how I extract that? And we talk about it a lot at an organizational level, but I'm really excited today because we're going to talk about it more of an individual level. And there's so much that is out there today.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so much. So we're glad that you're helping us dig through it. So we are going to get started. It's right after 1, and we'll have people who are going to join us. So let's just get it rolling, and then people can join us as they will. And we're so excited to have the two of you here today. We have Susan and Scott Westwater. They are globally recognized AI marketing transformation experts. They are the co-authors of a book called Voice Marketing, Harnessing the Power of Conversational AI. They're the co-founders also of Pragmatic Digital, which is an AI marketing consultancy. So I'm sure they have lots of interesting stories about the clients they've worked with. And they have over 2 decades of Fortune 500 marketing experience, helping marketing leaders transform AI from a complex topic to something that has just a real simple real world application. One of the reasons I asked them to speak was because of their ability to just take this complex topic that's ever changing and their knowledge about the latest tools and how to leverage them and just share it in a really simple way that you guys are going to get so much of value out of. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. And with that, I am going to leave the stage and turn it over to Susan and Scott.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So today, as I said, just a few moments ago, today we're going to be talking about how we can use AI as individuals so that we can basically not do more than survive. so that we can thrive. And so that it also frees us up to do the things that we want to do, that we're excited to do. Not that the things that we do, our jobs are drudgery, but there are ways that we can free ourselves up. And I'm going to try to not talk about doing more with less, because I think someone said if they heard that one more time, they'd jump out a window. Yep. But the idea here is more of freeing up and how you can enhance your skill sets, not necessarily replace.
Yep. And so when we, when Hope asked us to do this, normally what we do is a lot of like vision setting and like executive level training and organizational transformation. This is one of the first opportunities we've actually had to kind of go under the hood and actually share a lot of the tools, tips, and techniques that we actually use in our own business. And our background is in marketing and advertising. We both worked on the corporate side. We've worked on agency side. We're marketers at heart, and our entire career has been in marketing, customer experience, digital transformation. And so that's really led us as we worked in AI to write 2 books. Like Hope said, Voice Marketing. It's actually a finalist for the Barry Award from the American Marketing Foundation or Association Foundation. Mm-hmm. So it was one of 3 books that were actually recognized this year for impact on the marketing industry. And our first book, Voice Strategy, which is more focused on the techniques and workflows and processes we actually use internally to create conversational experiences. But again, all of this work is predicated on our 25 plus years of marketing and advertising. I was a visual designer in a former life. She was a content strategist in a former life. So we take a very real world practical approach to artificial intelligence. And so we're excited to be able to share some of the tools and tips that we actually use.
So today, as I said, we're going to talk about, a little bit, let's start at the ground. And the reason we do this is, in just talking with Hope a few moments ago, basically, when we talk about AI, there's always what's new, what's there. Also, definitions keep shifting. So it's always good to have a quick moment of let's level set. When we use these words, this is what we mean today. And then we're going to talk a bit about the everyday tasks that AI can streamline. And then we're going to address some myths and challenges that we ourselves have experienced. And then share with you a simple framework for how we approach where does AI fit. And then we also are going to be sharing some of the AI tools that we believe are must-have. And the reason why we believe they're must-have is because we are very much believers of eating our own dog food. So all of these are things that we use that we have found work really well.
Yep. So before we really jump in, what I'd like you to do is think about your workday and think about a task that you do, daily, probably multiple times a day, that if you could simplify it, it would actually make a huge difference in your productivity or just being able to turn things around a little bit more efficiently. So it could be, something like pulling together performance matrix from Google Analytics. It could be repurposing content for other channels, scheduling for optimized delivery of social posts, whatever it might be. But just think about things that you do. And what we like to say is what's something that you do 3 times or more throughout the day that takes quite a bit of manual time and effort to actually complete. That might be a really good opportunity as a starting point as we start to explain some of the ways AI is being used in marketing. Those are going to be some of the ways you can actually start to implement the technology immediately and start to see some of that efficiency gain and quite frankly, time back into your day.
So we have of course, pragmatic vision for artificial intelligence. And this is where we again talk about achieving your best work by combining your expertise with AI. It's not replace yourself with AI. It's not necessarily replace someone else. It is using AI to simplify tasks so that you can get to clear insights and then free you up then to focus on the strategic and impactful results. Get to those insights faster so that you can start to think about how you're going to strategically apply them. And strategy, I love to say this, is strategy is not always like someone bonks you on the head with a magic wand and says you're doing this strategically. Strategy can mean everything from, hey, I'm going to use my resources more strategically. I'm going to come up with plans more strategically. These are approaches I'm going to take. All of those things require some level of strategy. And that's an important thing to think about because that's what will help you stay with what's practical and what's going to help move the needle as opposed to be kind of quite frankly, a parlor trick.
So we're going to start out with kind of the basics. So when we think about artificial intelligence, what we're referring to is a technology that allows computers to simulate human behavior. So it could be learning, it could be comprehension, problem solving, strategic data analysis, creativity, etc. But the technology is actually simulating it. It's actually not capable of current day learning, comprehending, and problem solving. There's a lot of matching and pattern recognition that's going on behind the scenes. But there's still, again, there's plenty of technology underneath the hood where you can start to take real advantage of it and really, free yourself up from some of the more mundane things that maybe are fairly time intensive. And when we look at the types of AI that's used in marketing, there's really four main types. AI is kind of this large umbrella where all of these technologies fit underneath it. But generally speaking, conversational AI, so your chatbots, the voice assistants, call center assistants, etc. Those are examples of conversational AI. Generative, there's no shortage of examples of that right now, but that's the chat GPTs, the Groks, the Claudes of the world, plus any of the copywriting tools, image generation tools, video generation tools, etc. So this is generally where most of the mind share is when it comes to marketing AI, but there's still a ton of other options for you to deploy. So predictive AI, being able to look at past behaviors that have happened, specifically within your organization and predicting future outcomes. So super helpful for predicting inventory, for looking at seasonality and how the ebbs and flows actually change throughout the year. You can actually deploy predictive models that will actually look at your historicals and give you those kind of peaks and valleys. So you can actually adjust your campaigns accordingly. And then finally, there's this idea of programmatic and automation. So being able to automate your campaigns, deliver the information in a dynamic way, and analyze the performance, all based on current and past behaviors. So again, as we talk about this, I don't want you to just focus in on generative as kind of the only solution. There's many things that you can deploy from a department or brand standpoint. Generative is likely where at the individual level, you're going to see a lot of the benefit though.
So what you really need to know about AI. I mean, there's a lot of certificates, discussions, pieces out there, and they can get fairly intimidating. You don't need to know how to code anymore. I mean, there's obviously other ways to do that, but you also, it's good to know what fuels it, but you don't have to necessarily know how to make the exact sausage. So the more important, there are three things that we feel are like really, really important to keep in mind. One is AI learns from your data. So it's going to improve over time by learning from what information is given. The quality of the output then depends on what's the input, garbage in, garbage out. It's only as good as that data you feed it. AI also does best when it enhances, not necessarily replaces. So it supports our human decision-making, and it can help us do repetitive tasks, but it doesn't necessarily need to replace you completely. There's always, where we're seeing right now is the human in the loop is really important. Yep. And I know there is a little discussion about agentic and autonomous behaviors. There still should be a human in the loop. And that's also important because that then allows us to be able to have these great decisions and go down these paths. But then free ourselves up to do those things that really require creativity and expertise, like do the things that humans do best. And then the other important thing to do is, just like, I don't know how many of you have ever had to deal with programming DOS or any of those things, it needs clear direction. What you tell it to do, it will do what you tell it to do, but you have to then give it. And it's this notion of what we call a one-shot prompt of, I just put in the information, kind of put in my order, so to speak, and what I get is perfection. It's really almost an impossible task. The best things happen, again, with that human in the loop of where we give direction and we continue to give direction. I've heard many folks say that it's actually a way of thinking about it is it's an employee, and you need to manage them. So it does best when we use specific objectives and give very defined processes. So it's not necessarily a set it and forget it. You can start to refine and continue to get the most out of it by continually giving that direction and input. Just like how you are able to do a better job when you get more, because we just hear, hey, it's perfect, everything you're doing. You aren't able to iterate. The best is when there's that partnership.
If there's one hack that you take away from this entire conversation, if you already have SOPs established for whatever task, those are likely very good instructions for an AI assistant whether, again, ChatGPT, Grok, any of the tools that exist. If you have those SOPs that are already predefined, those are very specific instructions that an AI likely can replicate some or most of the workflow. So again, if you don't have SOPs, that might be a good place to start. But again, just to keep you or help you think about where you might be able to use the technology.
Yeah, AI is a great opportunity to putting down and to document your standard operating processes and procedures.
Yep.
It's just a great place to start from.
Yep. And really, at the end of the day, we're here to change the conversation because it's really not about technology. AI is about solving real business challenges. And I think that's one of the things that's been lost over the past few years as technologists. We get really excited about the technology and what it can do, but we've kind of lost sight of what are the actual real business challenges that this technology can help solve. Is it customer experience challenges? Is it internal efficiencies? Like whatever the goals and objectives of the organization are, those are really the things that we should be focusing on, not what the technology can do. Because otherwise you have a hammer in your hand and everything looks like a AI-shaped nail, and that's not necessarily the case. So in the next section, we're going to talk a little bit about everyday tasks that AI can help you with. And certainly these are techniques and things that we're using AI for, both for our customers and clients, but also internally.
So AI is no longer exclusive to large corporations. I mean, we were just talking about that, of the large budgets to deploy. There are accessible tools that are affordable, and that actually make it practical for any level of marketer to benefit from it. And to use them. There are different things of different places, as we talked about, those different flavors of where AI can actually help move the needle. And it's not necessarily a big giant rocket ship. There are really helpful, very specific ways that we can use AI just to make our lives a little bit easier.
Yeah, and the reality is likely the tools you're already using, like the HubSpots of the world, the Salesforces of the world, they have AI tools already built into them. Now, whether they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. But they do have tools that have been deployed within it to help you with segmentation, messaging, automation of responses, things like that. So if you haven't started looking into those types of tools within the existing tools, that also could be a really great start for just seeing what's available to you right now out of the box that you don't have to get additional budget or approvals for. And you can just leverage some of the tools that you already have, because again, most of them at this point, especially, MarTech type tools, already have AI components built into them.
So AI can, at the top level is, we've talked about personalization, and that's tailoring customer experiences. Not only does it make it so that you can tailor those experiences and pull that information, you can also then have the data analysis that's going to be able to let you know how much personalization you should do, or what placements make the most sense, what messages are resonating, all of that really great, powerful way to stay data informed. And then there's also automation. And that is where it's going through and streamlining some of those routine tasks with some flexibility of being able to not just straight up automate so that it's just continually going through it, but has some if-thens in there so that it can be a much more flexible approach and process. And then ultimately there's the creativity aspect of it. I think everyone knows about that from content generation, from a perspective of visuals, as well as copy, as well as brainstorming, all of those things. AI is incredibly helpful to use to at least get you to either a first draft or to even get into a point where, hey, this is going to be something production ready.
Yeah, and in the conversations that we have with the business community, there is a kind of underlying expectation that a lot of the new graduates coming out of colleges and universities will actually possess the AI technology knowledge and skills that they're looking for. So a lot of businesses expect similar behaviors to what we saw during the mobile revolution and how everyone was a little bit more digital first. The reality is the universities generally aren't allowing AI use, especially in non-technology focused departments. So basically what we have is for the general business, communications, marketing area, there's going to be this 4 or 5 year gap where, because the universities aren't upskilling folks yet, and existing employees don't have that knowledge base, this is really your opportunity to shine and really kind of cut through everything, because there is a huge gap. So I encourage you to take advantage of that, because it's going to be a small window, But you're also going to be the one internally who, as you learn how to use these tools, you'll be able to champion it. You'll be able to take on some leadership roles. There's also this concept of having like a AI council or consortium or whatever, certainly something that you'd also be able to help with, kind of shepherding it through the organization. So while you might be looking for tools and tips on how to implement it in your day-to-day, there's kind of a midterm and a long-term strategy here, and certainly something that you can take advantage of to really boost your career path.
So we're going to dive into a couple of those specific areas where we can use it. So report automation is a huge opportunity, because again, this is just pulling data from different sources. You can use it from a standpoint of, hey, I've got 4 different reports, I need to put them all together, and being able to go from there. Now, collection and data analysis is still something that we need humans to do. But when we have these reports and we have this information, you're actually, it does work well. You are able to do that. There's a tool we have right now where we're able to take a few reports and say, hey, what are the, especially this time of year in Q1 where we have all of these trend reports coming out. Yeah. It's really incredible to be able to use these tools. You can use any of the large language models and say, hey, help me figure out what are the common strands? What are these common threads? When you don't have time to read, say, 500 or 600 page reports, it's very helpful. And you can even ask it to tell you, hey, what page was that on? Can you please give me citations? Then you can go back and fact check, but it's able to help cut through that so that you are able to start seeing some of those macro trends that are really important to know, because that's what our clients are asking for, right? They want to know some of those, what's that marketing trend? What are those particular behaviors we're seeing? It can actually help give you a richer idea of what those trends look like, and also then arm you to be able to talk about them in a knowledgeable way.
Yeah. The other thing, and this is something that you actually just alluded to, is the ability to go through large data sets. So whether it's PDF reports, whether it's spreadsheets, whether it's conversations, if you're doing research and you just need to go through and pull a top line analysis, you can quickly start to get some of those top line results by using AI and then going back through the data yourself and validating and also adding to it. But this is great for internal data and also external data. So there's kind of 2 approaches. One's more competitive, SWOT analysis, directional, industry trends. So that's all external that you'd be able to run analysis on. And that obviously would be web data and everything else that you're already doing. But then there's this other idea of having your internal systems, somehow connected so that you don't have to physically go to Facebook, to Instagram, to whatever platform, Google Analytics, Search Console, whatever, and pull all those reports, individually. There's also ways to normalize that data and clean it so that that's all happening in an automated way. So whatever is in this platform or your report is actually all normalized, clean, and ready to go. So it's one of those things where there's so many different ways you can use the technology, not only from a time-saving standpoint, but again, kind of top-line results for research, which is honestly where a lot of our time falls, is, give me an executive summary of this report. Are there any interesting trends? What are some unexpected things that are being reported? And to be able to ask questions and dig deeper and just be curious. Like, we come up with a lot of insights just based on being able to ask basic questions to the research data. It's almost as good as being able to talk to the researcher, but obviously you don't have as much back and forth. But it's a super great way to start to get some insights from industry trend reports, web data, and everything else.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that you don't have to be a data analyst of asking specific, I'm trying to pull this from this dashboard and that dashboard. You can simply just ask the question of, well, hey, what if this plus this? And then if you want to know more, again, because we believe in validating everything just because mistakes can happen, is to then also then be like, how did you come up with that? Or why did you say that? And not having to necessarily pull back and feel like you have to suddenly learn about Boolean search or important commands. You're able to just ask it in your own plain language. And then based off of that, asking those questions of asking how they're behaving, then you are able to do some of that outreach. You can do those follow-ups, and you can focus your effort then on higher potential leads. So what this means is that I can start to then say, hey, I just need you to do an outreach, my speed to lead, or I need to do this follow-up. It can start to automate that and do it in a genuine way. Like the nice thing is I know automation people think, oh gosh, yeah, I hate those spammy DMs I get. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about ways that you can see through behaviors of these are the pieces of information, or hey, here's a recap of a meeting we just had. Here are the next steps. Here you go. You can send that out. So when you're doing some of those other pieces, you're able to just send them right out and be able to use people's language back towards them. So it can be as automated and turnkey as you want, or it can just be to inform you as you're going through templates and things like that.
Yep. And actually to that end, so one of the huge things that we do, which has completely changed our process, is this idea of actionable outcomes with AI. So basically recording meetings. So whether it's with prospects, whether it's with internal teams, whether it's external with clients, but basically get that transcript. And then once you have it, you're able to generate a contact report, a creative brief, a project brief, an estimate, like whatever documentation you need. You can actually use that transcript to inform it. I actually just did this last week with even a creative brief where we were talking to a friend that's got a low alcohol brand that he's launching. And he was like, yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble, coming up with the creative brief for this. So he was just explaining what the brand is and who they're trying to attract and flavor profiles and all that good stuff. And literally I took his transcript and said, create a creative brief out of this. And literally 45 seconds later, I had a draft that we can work from. And then we went back and forth and enhanced it and revised it or whatever. But again, this was all predicated on that direct conversation. It's the exact word choices that were used. So you can actually start to pepper that into your workflow. And if you're not doing at a minimum, being able to record meetings, this is a huge opportunity for individuals, teams, and also departments. And it's less about keeping tabs on folks. It's more about what was said in that conversation. The other great thing is there's a tool called Rewind that I use where during conversations, I could literally go back and ask, what did we decide was the room number for that event? For tonight, that literally was something that came up, and it's like, oh, you said it was going to be in this entrepreneur center at DePaul. So to be able to go back and get quick, answers for that type of stuff. Also, if you're doing any sort of research, to be able to have someone, recording everything so you can go through and do more focus on the conversation versus, making sure you're taking all the notes. That's actually a great time savings as well. So again, this is one of those things where there's so many different ways this can be applied. It really just depends on your specific use, but it's a great way to start saving some time.
The other part too is the effortless content adaptation. So what that means is if I have my message and I know that I'm going into different channels, it allows me to be able to, hey, I need this to be X characters or X words. Help me to make things shorter. Or help me to tinker with this for a different audience. Because let's say I'm talking to 65 plus cohort. And so the language I use for them, as opposed to the language I might use for someone who is in the 18 to 24 cohort, I might have a little tweak or two in there. And that's really helpful to be able to work through that, or to even use personas so that I can say, is this going to resonate right? Or is this the important benefit? It allows me to do that much more quickly. And again, human in the loop, starting with human generated pieces, then going from there. One of the things that we've noticed just in general with AI is there's going to be a lot of discussion about the value of content. What content actually requires a human, and what content, like directional content that makes sense, and I just need to review it so that I make sure that it does what it's supposed to, and that it's understandable and accessible, all those good things. But I can start with those drafts being generated by something other than another human, especially when I'm the person who's doing all the copywriting. It's really helpful to be able to say, oh, but this piece is really important. It absolutely needs to be written by a human. And that's been something that's been actually discussed quite a bit at the Marketing AI Institute as well. Obviously, the folks at Jasper have a lot of interest in that, but it is understanding what is really important and needs that, because then you can work through that. And then that's where you decide, am I going to use Claude? Am I going to use ChatGPT? Am I going to use Gemini or even Grok? How do you use those different things so you can go through there?
One accidental use case that I stumbled across a couple of weeks back is I was given an AI keynote for a sales and marketing kickoff, and I was having a hard time keeping all of the speech in my head. So I actually took the script, ran it through ChatGPT and said, can you go through, like, I want to use this with speaker notes, but can you go through and bold certain words, enhance the spacing, and then just do anything else from a visual standpoint so I can actually see exactly where I should be within the given part. And it actually put emojis into the script. So like, not only did it have like bolding of keywords and phrases, but it actually had like emojis, relevant emojis. So it actually triggered my mind, and it was super helpful. Never would have in a million years thought to use emojis within my script. But again, it was something that I already had the script written, having trouble trying to, remember all of it. And so it was a great way to just take the existing content and adapt it in a way that made me more comfortable as a presenter, and ultimately gave a better performance of the content. So one of the things that we had alluded to before, and this is ultimately one of the first things that we usually end up focusing on when we have an engagement where people say, hey, we want to do this AI thing. Usually after a few conversations, it becomes clear that the data house isn't in order. And there might be 10, 12, 15 different platforms where all of the information is siloed away. So we've had this request a few times, tell us what our AI plan should be. And it really starts with making sure your data quality is good. It's all cleaned and normalized so that your data structure is similar across the board. But there are platforms called customer data platforms, or if you've ever heard of the phrase data warehouse, that would be more of a custom solution. But these customer data platforms can actually integrate with all of your different tools, whether it be Facebook, LinkedIn, Sitecore for CMS, or any of the tools that you're using. You can actually hook up, and then it actually has a process where it'll learn what the data is. It'll normalize the data, clean the data, and actually give you clean information to report from, and then you can hook that up to Power BI or Tableau. The big benefit of it is you have everything in a centralized place. It's it's automating the data pulls, so you don't actually have to physically pull 20 different reports and look at that. And it creates a single source of truth. So it does go through and saves a boatload of time. I mean, how many times do you in a month go through and pull reports, whether they're ad hoc or scheduled? But also what this does is it gives the organization actionable intelligence to know we spent $200,000 on marketing. Here's how many leads were generated. Here's how many requests for proposals were created. And then ultimately, here's how many sales were generated. So this actually, again, is usually one of the first things that people focus on, because it's such an important component to having the data in the right place, having it structured properly, so you can start to do some of those predictive things that we talked about earlier. So now we're going to move into, kind of rubber hits the road, dispel a few myths and actually help you start to master some of the things that we're talking about. The other thing I should mention is at the very end of the presentation, we will have a link where you'll be able to download all of the software that we talk about, processes, workflows, things like that. So it's kind of a quick start guide. So you don't have to worry about taking too many notes as we're talking about tools and things like that. We do have a section coming up here in a few minutes, but also we have a download for you. No registration, free of charge, just grab it and go. But it actually has a lot of the tools and whatever that we've been talking about.
So let's talk about some of those myths. Like there is, as we've talked about, AI is going to replace marketers. I actually just saw a study from Jasper that was talking about the future of AI and the current state. They actually, what we're hearing from CMO levels and decision makers is right now where they're looking is they're saying it's not so much about reducing headcount as it's so much as looking for those folks who do know how to use AI. We might even have to make our team bigger because of all the things that it's going to enable us to do. So AI is going to be able to handle those repetitive tasks. And so that's going to allow you to be more strategic and creative. Ultimately, it's going to open you up to be able to look at things and have a moment to breathe, quite frankly. Again, it's a tool to enhance, not replace. And it's important to keep that in mind of the goal is to enhance, especially when we look at, yes, there are things that are large, giant things that are like, oh, the agentic and all of these things. They're not scalable at a budget right now. It's a sort of that fast, cheap, and good. You're only going to get 2 of those. And right now it seems that it's more of a world of fast and good. Cheap is not on the table. So the world we're living in right now is how do I nimbly do these things? How do I nimbly use AI?
The other thing that we hear all the time is AI requires way too much knowledge to use. So it requires deep technical knowledge. We need to have to code in Python. We have to be able to train models. And the reality is that's just not the case. Most of the tools that exist for the general population, for the business world, is designed for non-technical users. So as long as you can, type a prompt in your natural language and really kind of give it English or, whatever your chosen language is, but natural language instructions, a lot of these systems will be able to provide you with relevant information. So it's the first time, really since voice and conversational AI where you say something and you get a result, because it's not about learning how the system is built. It's learning how to express yourself in a natural way. So it's akin to giving really good creative direction or feedback on creative. So if you're a creative director or director, you've done any of those types of roles in the past, a lot of the things that you just have hardwired in because you're giving feedback actually make you a really good person or a candidate to learn how to prompt these systems really well to get the result that you're looking for. And if you don't get that result, like Sue said, like one shots really don't exist anymore where you just type one thing. It's more of a back and forth and a dialogue. So it'd be exactly how you would talk to a junior level copywriter, art director, developer, whatever. And you have that dialogue and you go, nah, that's not exactly what I was looking for. I was thinking more about this. And so it's kind of code creation and really getting comfortable with looking at these systems as an assistant, a co-pilot, a coworker, if you will. That's really what we're looking at. So it's not about having coding skills. It's just about thinking through your daily challenges and where can we maybe shave off 10 minutes to an hour, because over the course of a week, over the course of a month, over the course of a year, that really starts to add up.
So we use a pretty simple framework, believe it or not, to be able to integrate AI into workflows and to help our clients. Part of this, again, goes back to the idea of let's not lead with the technology. Let's lead with what we're trying to solve or those areas where we see the opportunities. So we start with looking at your workflow or your processes. Look at that. And then we start looking at the tasks. Again, we look at things of 3 times a day. What am I doing repetitively? Or what makes me sit there and say there has to be a better way, quite frankly. Those are some of the things then you start to look at, okay, how might we? And then you start looking into how you can match those tasks to what AI can help with, because it's not going to solve everything. I wish it would, but it doesn't. There's still tasks I have to do, and that's the way life is. That's why it's called work, right? And then you start to select those tools. You start to pilot, and then you can expand based on results. It's very important from that perspective of having kind of that, I'm not going to use it widespread until I have used it enough times to be comfortable and to also refine so that I'm getting the best result possible. But the idea is to iterate and start from those things of what are those things that are going to make sense? What are those pain points?
Well, and something I just thought of, we should actually add a 6th bullet to this, and that would actually be share your results and experiences with the rest of the team, your manager, whoever will listen, because that's going to be how you start to really set yourself apart. So it's not only I use these tools, you don't want to keep that a secret. You want to be able to share those wins so that you become the voice of authority. And quite frankly, you can start to train others in how to do similar things. One of the things that we hear all the time is this idea of, hidden silos or pockets within an organization of people using AI. And, if there's an edict from up high where you're not supposed to use it, people are still using it. They're just not sharing the learnings. And so, as a leader, I encourage you to look at ways you can ethically and safely deploy the technology within your organization, but empower your employees so that they know, hey, if you do this and you save, 3 hours in your day, that's something we can actually deploy across the entire division. And you should be recognized for that. You should get accolades for it. And ultimately, it should help your career path. So again, it's not about just doing it and then being silent. It's about doing it and then sharing the wins and sharing the learnings and losses so that everyone can benefit from what you just did. So now we're going to actually get in a little bit more into detail on each one of these, but at a high level, that's really what we're talking about. It's finding the workflow and then basically testing it, testing the tool, seeing how it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, move on. It's pretty straightforward.
Yep. So again, we talked about assessing your workflow. So identify those time-heavy tasks or those repetitive things. And I know that I've worked with teams and I've worked with folks who are like, but we don't have a process. If you get things done, you have a process. It may not be a beautiful process, but you got one.
Yep.
And start there of like, what are the steps I have to do? And sometimes you have to move up to a higher level of what are those common steps that are a part of it. And then you can drill down again to what are those tasks that are related. That is a really helpful way of being able to just understand where those AI opportunities are.
Yeah, and then really look at how you can match those tasks to specific strengths. So in the download, I also have a LLM comparison, so large language model, where we look at, I think, the top 6 LLMs out there. So Gemini, Grok, OpenAI, Claude, Perplexity, and there may be one other in there. But basically, what are the pros and cons? What are the uses? What are they better at than others? So some models are better at analysis, some are better at copywriting. So it's about matching the right tool or technology to what you're trying to achieve. So really, it's about figuring out what task you have, and then what flavor of AI might make sense, but then also selecting the right tool so that it aligns to your needs. So one of the tools that I use personally all the time is Lindy.ai. Not promoted. I'm not involved with their organization at all. I'm just a huge fan of what they've been doing, because they have created a platform that allows you to use Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, OpenAI, maybe one more, but select the different models all on their platform. So you can actually create different Lindys that are using different models. So you can actually match their strengths against what you're trying to accomplish. And then they've also built integrations so that it can actually go out and send your results to a spreadsheet within Google Sheets or into Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever you're trying to achieve. So you can actually use Lindy as almost a connection point where you're able to do a lot of your analysis work and then share it with the tools that you're already using. So that's, again, another example of just picking the right tool for the actual application and then testing it and seeing how it works. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to work outright the first time. Yep. There is a little bit of back and forth. There is a little bit of massaging. But, as it says here, like, you can literally turn a 30-minute meeting into a task list within about 30 seconds. And so to basically have that, as opposed to having a junior level account person taking notes after their day's over, typing up the notes, creating the action items, you can literally have it created within a minute of the meeting being over with and have it auto sent to everyone. So they have everything, plus the full transcript if they ever wanted to go back to it. But again, it's just a way to save time. And again, to get those quick wins, to find those time savings or efficiencies. And then once you decide, yes, this is something worthwhile, start to socialize it.
And then the final step of expanding based on your results. So once you start to see those positive results, once you start to say, okay, so we are be able to get, instead of having that junior account person who's writing all those notes, or it might even be an account soup, depending on how big you are, being able to get those really great detailed notes, but making sure that, oh, you know what, instead of you having to spend all the time of listing it out, you can just read through it and confirm, yep, that was what was said. Oh, wait, let's highlight this. But in general, we're now moving from this generation creative time to just editorial or editing, which is incredibly efficient. And then once you start to see that work in a way that you want to, or, hey, I'm using this particular tool to research this report, share that with others, but then also start to push, start to look of, okay, here are the other areas. The other thing too, that I just want to stress is we talk about using multiple models because that's kind of just my general habit. But if you're still starting out and you just want to, you can start with one. You can just start with ChatGPT, or you can start with some of the other ones. That's perfectly okay to do. And then you can start to expand. That's one. There's a whole LinkedIn discussion that one of our good friends, who is the developer evangelist at Samsung, said, I keep getting asked what model do I use? That's always helpful to share out there and see, like, you just start with one, get comfortable, and then you can expand to others.
Yep. Yeah, ChatGPT is really good for some copywriting, and actually something that Sam shared yesterday. They're working on a creative writing mode. So it's decent at copywriting, but it's really good at data analysis.
Yeah.
So a lot of these models aren't great at mathematics. So if you ask it basic, third or fourth grade math, it might not necessarily solve it, but if you're looking for trends or data analysis, and as long as it's not like financials, you can actually use, Claude's actually decent at that, but it's better at copywriting. Perplexity is great at research and search. So there's different applications for the different tools, but it's kind of, in our opinion, harnessing them all together is really the biggest benefit you can get. So like Sue said, start with one, learn what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are, and then start playing around with some of the other models that exist, because that's going to really be how you get, as an individual, the biggest bang for your buck. So you're not in the business of AI, and I think that's something that's pretty clear from the presentation. You're really in the business of marketing excellence. We want you to be able to focus on that and not let the technology get in your way. And so again, to use it as an enabler of, not a replacement for. So now's the fun part. Now's the part that I'm sure everyone's been waiting for. And it's really the tools. And so we've got 7-8 tools that are listed here, plus in the worksheet for the download, there's a bunch of other things in there. But these are the ones that we use for the most part in our day-to-day process. And so it's not about finding the perfect tool, as we kind of alluded to. It's about picking the right one for the specific task and using it well to actually accomplish your challenge. And so we mentioned this one already. Rewind.ai is actually one of the tools that I've been using for probably the better half of about a year and a half now. Adrian, thank you for pointing out in the comments that it is right now Mac and iOS only, but I do know they are working on a Windows and Android version of it. But the great thing about it is not only will it, just like what Outlook does, where it shows a little reminder when you have a meeting, it actually asks if you'd like to record the meeting. All you have to do is hit that, and it'll automatically record the meeting for you. And that could be, a Zoom call, a Google Hangout. You can use it for physical phone calls as well. But it also will keep tabs on everything that you're doing on your computer. So like if you're on LinkedIn and you're trying to, find that article about Sam Altman saying, this about, creative copywriting, you can actually ask Rewind, and it'll actually go back to that moment where you're on LinkedIn and find that specific post. So I use it like probably 4, 5, 6 times a day, because there's constantly things that I find.
What tab did you have open?
But yeah, I have multiple windows, multiple tabs. It's always impossible to find. So to be able to do that, or be able to ask a simple question, hey, what room did we discuss, for this event, and just be able to get the answer. It's actually been a huge time savings for me. And it's actually one of the foundational pieces that we've actually used in our process, which has allowed us to turn around proposals and estimates and really documentation a lot faster. So definitely recommend this one. There's also, Otter.ai. Lindy has a meeting recorder. A lot of the tools that exist now.
Copilot has one. Zoom has theirs as well. The important thing is just making sure also that, and I'd be remiss not to say this, let folks know, hey, I'm using a note taker.
Yep.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yep.
And that I've seen there's also, I think, even one called Note Taker. Any of these are just helpful ways of capturing that so that you can always look at that. Fathom's another great one.
So again, it's about, being able to get intelligence out of conversations that you're already having. The other thing that I'll share is, as you're talking things out, it's usually a really good and rich territory for content, especially if you're either a content manager or you're, an individual solopreneur type folk, to be able to record a conversation, summarize the conversation, and then turn it into social content or a blog piece or whatever. It's your words and it's things that you described. It's just helping you structure it. So again, there's so many things you can do once you have that transcript. It's more about just trying it out and seeing how you can use it for yourself.
Beautiful AI is another one I like to use. I'm not a designer. I'm copying content creation, not design. And therefore, working with Beautiful AI has helped me to be able to craft better looking presentations, quite frankly. We all have our lives in PowerPoint. What's really nice about it is there are, you can use as much AI or as little as you want. You can use it as a way of just creating things, helping you find images. Like that's always a challenge, because with Beautiful, it does actually have royalty-free imagery. So that can help you figure that out of like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I need to drop it in. Oh, and it drops it in the right size. So there isn't someone going, why did you put a tiny pixelated photo in there? This has been a game changer as far as making the design person in my life happier. It's also really helpful because you can also say, hey, here's my script. help me figure out what would be the slides to use with that. And you can do it by section, or you can do it of the presentation, and it can help you with that. So sometimes when I'm working out an outline and I've got my content and I know the things I want to say, I'll actually work with one model of, I'll use either ChatGPT or Claude, sometimes even Grok, just because I've been exploring Grok lately. Looking with them, get my outline from there, then start to work with that in Beautiful, so that then I'm able to put those things together. It's just helped me tighten up my copy, and it's also helped me kind of up my design game of what's going on in slides.
Plus, it's been super helpful as the designer to not have to design slides after it's all content is in and images and things like that. So overall, it's actually a really well-built tool, even from a visual designer perspective.
And there is a free version of it. There's a free, there's free and paid, which is really helpful, and you can share it with others.
Yep. Lindy, I mentioned before, but it's effectively think ChatGPT or Claude meets Zapier, where you have all these different integrations. And so it's a tool that you can basically create any of your existing workflows. If you want to make outbound phone calls, you can do it. If you want to be able to create a chat bot, you can do it here. But you can also start to use it for data analysis. And the cool thing about it is you can actually create multiple Lindies or virtual employees that you can give specific tasks to. So what I like to do is actually create a persona with their experience, their roles and responsibilities, kind of their backstory almost, and then basically start to have the different Lindies work together. So for instance, looking for people to contact for a meetup group, like literally use Lindy to go through and find people that meet a specific profile. They're in marketing, they're interested in, technology, et cetera, et cetera. And then to be able to use another Lindy, so that first one actually found the people, the next one actually can enhance their profile and give me additional information about them to make my outreach more effective. Then there's another one that I could use if I wanted to actually craft that message and send it. And so this is a great way to start to stack, these kind of one-offs that you would normally have in ChatGPT or Claude, and actually get them to work together to give you that output. So big fan of this tool. Shout out to Flo and the team over there. They're doing some great work. Post-Cheetah is another tool that I've been using for probably the better part of 2 years now. And this is actually a tool, especially for people that want to create content and don't necessarily have either all of the time or a full content team to actually create this. So what it is, it actually allows you to do keyword research or long tail phrase research. And it gives you a list of information, just like SEMrush and some of the other SEO tools does. But then once you go through and have kind of that first direction, then it gives you 4 or 5 different options. One is like Google suggestions, one's listicle, one's top questions, and it'll actually show you different relevant topics around that kind of keyword or that key phrase, but kind of in those different formats. The great thing is once you have that, you can actually say, create the outline on this topic. And then if you wanted it to, you could actually say, generate the article. And then there's an SEO checker, scorer in the tool. It integrates with WordPress and Webflow at this point. So it's a way where you could literally go from kind of idea to publish blog post in 5 minutes. Not saying that's what you should do.
Yeah.
I certainly want you to be able to go back and do editorial, add your own perspective to it and things like that. But as far as a outline, it's fantastic. It's incredible how quickly you can actually generate relevant information from an outline standpoint, predicated on your ideal customer profile or your personas that you're trying to attract. So again, this is a great way to shortcut the process, but I would say it's part of the process. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using it all the way through, although you could. Phrase.io is actually another great SEO tool that I kind of use in concert with Post-Cheetah. And so what this will do is once there is a article created, I can actually run it through Phrase, have it evaluate the content, score it, but also show other keywords that people are ranking for in the same topics. It shows you the competitive pieces that are ranking above where you are. And then as you make edits to the content, it actually changes your score. So if you've added more keywords, you've made it more relevant to the topic, it's showing you a better score. And it actually shows you roughly where it thinks you'll rank. And so this is a great kind of 1-2 punch with either Byword or Post-Cheetah to optimize the content after the fact, so you can continue to make sure that it is as relevant as possible. But you also have visibility into what some of the competitors are doing, especially since a lot of the content marketing platforms cover a lot of the topics that we cover. So it's also great to see how people have positioned their stuff to make sure that you're not only relevant, but you're also standing out instead of just doing exactly what they're doing.
And then alt text AI is, it's been really important to generate images, text for your images. This is a way of making it possible to help, like when I'm starting to write them, there is a craft to it. It's really helpful to start helping me to be able to write that alt text in a quick and easy way of using those images. And it's been able then to, that way then I know I can make that a habit and get into that habit of generating that alt text, and also making sure that I'm doing it well. It is really nice to be able to have this tool be able to make sure that, hey, this is what you're writing on, and this is what people care about. Yeah, you can go back and think back, and I always do look back to edit, but it's nice to have that draft to work with, as opposed to over describing or losing I have a tendency to get overly run out of characters. This is a great way of keeping me within the character I need to be. And it's also multilingual. So it's really helpful if I'm doing other types of things that are in language or outside of English.
Well, and I can't tell you how many times I've done web projects where meta descriptions, meta titles, and alt text aren't done until the very, very last minute because everyone forgot about, quite frankly. So if you're in that situation, here's a great tool to kind of bail you out, but it's also a great tool to start to build in your workflow and your process so that you're making sure that you're accounting for your alt text and any of the SEO relevant meta descriptions, titles, etc. Actually, I see there's a question in the chat. So let me go back to phrase. I have not actually tested it against, so I haven't done an A/B test to see what a unphrased, for lack of a better term, document, how that ranks versus a phrased optimized. I will say that with using Postshita, my own editorial, and being able to add my own pieces to it, and then using phrase, I've seen a lot of success, and I've seen a lot of our content rank fairly highly, and I can actually go back into Search Console and see where I started that process, and we can see it trending upward throughout the past year and a half or so. But I've never done a apples to apples comparison of here's basically the same content, optimized versus not. I just haven't done that. So Andy Crestodina might be someone to ask about that.
Yep.
And if Andy's at our event tonight, I'll certainly remember to ask him. But unfortunately, I just don't have that comparison to know how accurate it is. But I've seen good success with it. So. And then the last tool that we have used, and this is great if you're doing any social content, is Opus Clip. So the website is opus.pro, but the platform itself is Opus Clip. And basically what it allows you to do is upload a 30-minute video, 10-minute video, whatever the length is, and it'll analyze the content. It'll look at the script from the transcript, and it'll basically start to say, here are clips that will be relevant to your audience. And so it gives you a grade based on, a bunch of different criteria: virality, impact. I can't remember exactly all the different pieces that they grade the content on. But at the end of the day, it says, here are 4 clips that would be considered A's, and those should actually perform very well. Here's some that are B's, etc. The cool thing is it creates the subtitles for you. It creates the edit for you. If it's multiple people talking, you can actually stack the videos on top of each other. And it's actually not that expensive. So thinking back to my art director days where we'd have long form content and then have to go through the edit and say, all right, from this time code to this time code is where we'll edit it. And here's what we'll say. This is a huge time saving. So definitely something to check out. And there's a bunch of other tools out there that will help you with, editing podcasts or editing your video content, changing out ums and awkward pauses and things like that. Like Descript does a great job with that. But there's definitely a lot of production level tools that are accessible to everyone now to make your job easier for generating content, especially for social. So as I teased out before, we have put together a guide for you. So if you go to bit.ly/AI Quick Start, you'll be able to download it. There's no form, there's no gate or anything like that, but it's literally a summary of everything we talked about. A lot of the tools that we had actually discussed are in there. There's some additional ones that we didn't get to just due to time. But it also talks about, how do you go through and evaluate the tools? How do you work it into your process? So if this is something that is interesting or relevant to you and something that you want to dig a little bit deeper into, we put this together for you as a thank you. And also a way for us to share back with the community, you know, with all the stuff that we've been doing. So, and Hope was so great to put it in the comments. So go ahead and grab your copy from there. But again, I think it's a 6-page PDF with, again, all of the stuff we've talked about and more. So definitely go ahead and grab that. So with that, we've pretty much reached the end. So if anyone has any questions, we can either answer them now, or certainly we can do some follow-up. Hope is going to be able to share our contact information in the show notes. And yeah.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, if you have any questions, first of all, thank you. This was really fantastic information. And it was just like we expected. Really nice, easy to understand information, and just some important tips and some great tools. So if anyone has questions, you can drop them in the comment section.
Yeah, and while we're doing that, one other thing that we didn't get a chance to talk on today, but when we look at career development as solopreneurs, in a way of like, it's just the two of us who are the main bench. As we're going through things, I actually have a couple different, basically I've set up personas within each of my large language models that are just sort of like, hey, is this, you know, I know there's folks that are like, yeah, it's your target audience. Yeah, you can do that for the brand to help you guide what your tone should be. But I've also gotten a step further of, hey, how do I approach this? Or how do I give this feedback to someone? And running it through there so that you kind of almost have your one-on-one career coach or someone you can bounce ideas off when you're trying to work through, and you kind of set them up to be sort of like, this is how I'm going to handle this conversation with this client. It's just a nice way of being able to help yourself be able to go through and take those things. Another thing that we've talked about and I've actually used is putting ChatGPT on voice mode, going through a presentation, and then having come back and say, you're a voice coach, you know, you're a speech coach. Help me identify spots here, or where is this not making sense, or help me with clarity. It's a simple, nice way of being able to, again, add that extra level of polish to what you're doing. So if there is a presentation or a difficult conversation, I actually had a friend who was like, I need to write an email to get a raise. And she's like, can you help me? I said, I can help you, but you can also create a persona of someone who's like your boss, maybe very, you know, those types of attributes, and then help you craft that email so that you can get that meeting. Still waiting to hear how that meeting went out, but she actually got it. Those are just some nice ways of being able to kind of just, again, is it necessarily replacing things? No, but it's helping to just put that extra level of polish that you sometimes are looking for to put on things.
Those two examples are golden. So is anyone, if you want to just drop in the chat really quick, if anyone's using any tools or anything like this, I would love to know. Personally, just while we're waiting, I love Claude, so I'm glad you mentioned it. I do a lot of the copywriting, and I love it for that. But you know what I think is so interesting is just the prompt engineering and how to enhance it. Like how like you said, it's not one and done. You have to tell it what to do. It's just like a creative brief. You know, garbage in, garbage out, right? You need to like set it up and give it information. So what I'm also going to mention is we are starting and I haven't mentioned this to the two of you, so I know, surprise. So just because I'm in the stage where I want to learn everything, and I know there's other people who would like to learn as well. So one of the things that I'm doing with a friend of mine who she's an ex-BCG person, and she was going to help facilitate, but it's not set in stone. But we are going to have like every couple weeks, we're going to meet together and we're going to have a skill that we want to learn on. And we're each going to take an aspect of it. So if you guys want to be part of that, I know you could probably lead it, but, you know, or give us ideas of what to be looking for. I would love for you to be our advisor, because I think that's fantastic.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
And then I know Lana, you're here, so she's going to be joining us, which I'm so excited about. I haven't reached out yet, so surprise, Lana, you're going to be part of it. So I'm going to drop that in the link. There's just a little interest form that people can fill out, and we will get started. You know, it's in the next, probably in the next month, and I just a way to get together and to, it's, you know, when, especially for entrepreneurs or maybe someone who works at a company who's not using it, it's a place to go where you can start learning and have like an excuse. Oh yeah, you know, today I want to learn about this week, or this couple weeks I'm going to learn about this. And then to each learn and come back and share what you learned, I think could be really beneficial.
Hugely
that's
beneficial.
huge. I mean, those secret AI societies are real and they aren't helpful. Like we've seen, and I'll say enterprise level, maybe they're starting to scale, but in general, we see that it's like at the individual and team level, possibly business unit, and that's where then share that info. And if you don't have like a giant business unit to be working within, it's a great way to be able to compare those notes. There was a of course, I'm blanking on his name, but we actually saw a speaker who was talking about, well, let's chat GPT it. One of the things he had talked about was as creators and as some of the builders behind AI, we don't know what people are going to use it for. People, and it's like this second level of folks who like such as yourself, who are grabbing these tools and using them. Mm-hmm. We're learning every day. We learn new different ways that people are using these tools. And it's like, I never thought to do it that way. That's amazing. So these are ours to use and to find new ways. So I love that you're helping foster that.
Yeah.
So now where are these secret societies that you mentioned? And we're at 2 or 3. So if you can go over a couple more minutes.
A lot of times they're within organizations. Yeah. And so when I gave that keynote a couple of weeks back, afterwards, the CEO asked the room, how many people here are using AI, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, whatever, like 80% of the room raised their hand. And he's like, I'm actually surprised by this. And he was happy. He was pleasantly surprised, but there was no like official like direction from leadership about if you can use it or not. But what's happening is people have learned I can use it for this, but it's not, again, they're only sharing those knowledge pieces. Right. So it's like, okay, time out. Like, let's look at it from a learning opportunity. Yeah. Like who's doing what with it? And how can we actually start to help each other learn how to use it? So like a lot of cross-pollination between like marketing helping sales or sales helping marketing. Like, hey, we're using it for this. What are you guys using it for? Oh, we haven't even thought about that. So a lot of those like one-off conversations have been happening, but the societies that we're referring to typically are within an organization, especially if there's been an edict of no AI, which we always chuckle and say, well, that means no Grammarly, that means no spell check, no predictive text. Like it's all AI. So, but it's about like meaningful. How can you use the technology? So
we don't always have to launch rocket ships with AI. We don't have to go that high. I mean, folks immediately go to these large levels, these large use cases. Sometimes it's as simple as like, again, just make sure like, can you edit my text for clarity? I'm writing this brief. What are some questions that someone might ask reading this that I what have I forgotten? It's a really just a helpful way of using it, even from that, again, to just enhance or make things better.
Cool. And then one final question, if you'll indulge.
Yeah.
Where do you learn? Like, do you like the Neuron? Is there any, like, do you have to, and there's of course your LinkedIn newsletter, which I have the link to that in the links I put in there. Do you have any favorite places where you learn?
So in the download, I actually have books and also organizations / people we follow. So Marketing AI Institute, if you're in marketing, absolutely check out Paul Raitzer and Mike Kaput. They have a podcast that they put out, I think, weekly. Yep. They do MAYCON. It's going to be in October this year, so big conference. They're great. But we have resources in there in addition to, like, there's our book. There's Mike and Paul have a book. There's Writing is Designing from Andy Welfie and Michael Metz. Yeah. Okay. And so there's and Twitter, quite frankly, there's a lot of conversation happening on Twitter. X. I would actually say more people should pay attention to what's happening on X because it tends to be a little bit more direct of what's going on versus what we see on LinkedIn, which is usually a week or two after kind of some of these things break. So if you want to like stay up on the latest and greatest, like look at, AI hashtags or whatever, but on X, because it's like literally as things are happening, you're seeing it almost in real time. It can become overwhelming, but that's where you're going to get it straight from the source.
Cool. Okay. And then I'm sure, and we'll end because I know you have an event to go to DePaul. So if you happen to be free this evening at DePaul, do you want to say what time the event is at?
It is at from 5:30 to, I think we're going to run until about 7. And tonight we're talking, we have basically AI Champion Roundtable. And this time we're going to have internal folks. We have 3 different folks. One person talking about how they've integrated, he led the charge to integrate AI into product services. Another person who's talking about how they were actually able to start their AI journey, their client of ours in manufacturing and putting in marketing. And then our third person is someone who's actually was leading some of the technology of figuring out how to use it in HR and coming up with use cases and talking about. But a lot of what we were asking them tonight is to share your experience. How did you do that? What did you do for dealing with pushback? Just some of those things that I would love to say we know all those questions. We don't, because we're not inside the trenches. So these are folks that were literally in those boardrooms where the dead silence, or the, oh my gosh, everybody, let's run. Let's go run and use the AI right now. Hold up, we need a policy. Talking through those ways of doing it in a meaningful way.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, thanks to both of you. Thank you for everyone who joined us.
Yes.
And we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.
All right,
Thank you.
Bye-bye.